So far in this deep dive, we've seen how divorce has been turned into a big business, with therapists, coaches, and services profiting from women's empowerment while men are left behind. And even how the timing of divorce filings follows a predictable season that the industry exploits. But none of this happens in a vacuum. The reason that these patterns stay locked in place is because politics and policy make them profitable, and cultural narratives make them untouchable. And that's where we turn to next. So I considered having a guest join me in this part of the deep dive discussion, but I wasn't sure that the timing would work out for us, and honestly, I'd rather keep giving my perspective from that of a psychologist. So this won't be about specific laws or lawmakers, may reference them just a little bit here, but more about the social, psychological, and cultural aspects of political rhetoric in the divorce industry. I hope that this is a good take from a new angle that's helpful for you as I review women's rights rhetoric, lobbying power, media narratives, custody bias, and even touch a little bit on the myth of deadbeat dads that results from all of that. When we talk about divorce, politicians keep women's rights in divorce and custody battles in the spotlight because it's a reliable way to gain votes and maintain power. Meanwhile, men's concerns such as custody bias, financial devastation, and emotional fallout rarely enter those conversations. This part of the divorce industrial complex deep dive exposes how laws, policies, and cultural narratives consistently stack the deck, ensuring that the imbalance stays exactly where it is, politically profitable. Let me take just a moment to acknowledge that I do realize that many of you may already be familiar with much of this content, and maybe you have been for quite some time. But if you found this video because you've been thrown into the divorce machine recently and unexpectedly and have no idea what to expect, keep in mind that the courtroom is not the only place where outcomes are decided. The real architecture of divorce is built in, as I mentioned, politics, policy, and cultural narratives that predetermine how men experience the process way before they even step into a family court or into an attorney's office. Underlying all of this is not simply a matter of legal codes. It's psychological conditioning, and it's been going on for goddamn decades. Men grow up in a system that outright states that their voices won't be heard and that their pain won't be recognized, even that their role as a father is not important. Understanding how this structure works from a psychological perspective is the only way to see why men consistently emerge as collateral damage. So let's break this down just a little bit. Women's rights rhetoric has been one of the most powerful tools in shaping divorce debates. Politicians frame almost every reform in terms of protecting women, even when evidence shows that men face steeper consequences. Just recently, in fact here in 2025, the conversation around rolling back no-fault divorce has resurfaced, with some conservative lawmakers presenting it as a way to strengthen family stability, while critics, on the other hand, denounce it as an attack on women's autonomy. And how about that nerve, right? Looking out for the women over the family itself. What was missing in that conversation was the male perspective. Men who are disproportionately bankrupted, men who face higher risk of offing themselves. I don't want that word to appear in one of my videos on YouTube. Right, but you get what I'm saying. Those are men who lose daily access to their children. Somewhere around 18,000 of them every year, I believe it is. The rhetoric works because it's politically safe, right? I mean, hell, no one wants to appear to oppose women's protection. But the psychological impact on men is profound. They internalize the message that they are the villains to be contained, not equal citizens to be heard. Behind the rhetoric is lobbying power. Bar associations and family law groups pour tons and tons of money into preserving the system as it is. We'll get into the attorney part, I think, in part 4 coming up. It's coming up soon in this dive. But that's because conflict keeps cases going and it keeps fees high. Advocacy organizations focused on women's rights, often with significant political ties, further push the narrative that divorce is primarily a women's issue. Meanwhile, men's advocacy groups are fragmented, as I've mentioned before. They're way underfunded, and they're often considered to be politically toxic. For fathers, this creates a sense of absolute futility. You're not just fighting for your spouse or your children in court, or you're not just fighting your spouse in court. You are, in fact, fighting an entire lobby machine that thrives on your silence and your checkbook. Additionally, media narratives lock the culture into this imbalance as well. Stories of women overcoming divorce, you see those headlines all the time as empowerment arcs. Hell, best-selling memoirs and books, op-eds, viral TikToks, all while men's experiences are either ignored or, even worse, portrayed through the stereotype of the angry, bitter ex-husband. You toss in some toxic masculinity to boot. Last year, in 2024, an analysis in Journalism Studies, that's a research journal, found that coverage of divorce in U.S. newspapers skewed heavily toward women's challenges and victories, while men were typically mentioned only in relation to finances or child support obligations. I mean, there is real hard evidence out there that supports this. That imbalance is a reporting choice. Always remember, it's a choice in what is reported, as it shapes how the public perceives men. Psychologically, men absorb that absence as erasure. Their struggles, they don't count. Their grief, totally invalid. And their losses, hell, you deserved it. Shouldn't have been a douchebag. Perhaps nowhere is this more evident than in custody bias. And for those of you who have been through that right along with me, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even when evidence supports shared parenting, the system resists reform. Researchers by the names of Fabricius and Sue, back in 2017, not too long ago, showed that children in shared custody agreements reported higher well-being, yet many judges remain reluctant to break the cultural model of mother as primary caregiver. In Kentucky, however, and I really love this story, the introduction of presumptive 50-50 custody in 2018 was shown to have measurable effects. Divorce filings decreased by 25%, and families reported higher satisfaction with post-divorce arrangements. That comes from actually a more recent Wall Street Journal article in 2024. But even with such evidence, other states refused to adopt similar laws for fear of political backlash. For fathers, the lesson is very clear that even when science is on your side, when there is ample evidence, the system is not on your side. This is compounded by the deadbeat dad myth. It's a political tool, make no mistake, that reinforces stereotypes to justify aggressive child support enforcement. We'll get into this one here in just a little bit too. I think some of this will fascinate you in upcoming parts. The narrative erases fathers, basically, who want more time with their kids, but who are pushed into financial strain through court orders. Just this year, in 2025, the U.S. Office of Child Support Enforcement reported that over $30 billion in payments were collected annually, much of it through wage garnishments. Yep, coming right out of dad's paychecks. Enforcement campaigns frame this as protecting the children, but the reality is that men who cannot keep up due to unemployment or legal fees are branded as irresponsible, even when they're doing everything possible to stay involved. And many of you know this. Even if a father paying support, coming right out of his paycheck, loses his job, he's laid off, unemployed, still required to pay unless and until he goes to court, gets a new order to reduce that amount, even temporarily. And where is he going to get the money to pay for that? Again, I'll turn it back to psychological effects. The shame of being labeled as a deadbeat corrodes self-worth, driving many men into depression or withdrawal And as I mentioned, about 18,000 of them every year here in the United States ending their own lives. Ooh, actually got a little bit choked up on that. Did not expect that. The political machinery behind this imbalance also comes back to vote harvesting. Women are treated as a reliable voting bloc. I believe that women, in fact, do vote more than men. So centering them in political policy and with regard to divorce is actually electorally profitable. It gets people elected and keeps them in their careers. Men, again, meanwhile, seen as fragmented, unpredictable, and less likely to organize around family policy. Hell, even when they do, they're extremely unsuccessful. As a result, fathers' concerns are invisible not only in legislation, but also in campaign rhetoric. A man watching a political debate about divorce doesn't see himself on stage. He sees himself left out, again. That absence translates into a sense of societal exile, deepening that psychological wound of divorce itself. So what would reframing the debate look like? It means shifting divorce away from being coded solely as a women's rights issue and toward being understood as a family stability issue. It means policymakers acknowledging that children need both parents and that men suffer measurable declines, huge declines in mental and physical health after divorce, not to mention the increased alcohol and substance abuse, and that laws must serve balance rather than political profit and careers. Research by Sabara in 2011, I think I mentioned this one in part 1, showed that divorced men face significantly higher rates of, again, depression, substance abuse, and even mortality compared to women. Yet no campaign slogan reflects this reality. If you see one, I'd love to see it. Until the culture acknowledges that divorce devastates men in unique and measurable ways, the political system will continue to exploit the imbalance rather than repair it. In the end, the politics of divorce are less about laws on the books and more about the psychology of the narratives. Reframing isn't just legislative, it's cultural and psychological. If divorce is finally treated as a crisis of family stability rather than an opportunity for political gain, men may no longer have to carry the burden of being invisible in a system that profits from their pain. So looking ahead to part 4, politics and cultural narratives set the stage, but they're not the only forces keeping men trapped in the cycle and keeping them broke and bankrupt. Once you step into family court, those same imbalances become dollar signs for the people paid to represent you. Attorneys don't profit from a resolution. Let's make that very clear. They profit from prolonging conflict and maybe even creating it. So coming up, we'll look directly at how lawyers can turn custody battles, child support disputes, and endless filings into a business model that feeds off families falling apart.